My goal for myself as well as for everyone I work with is actually to help them grow their email list, right? And in terms of organic, non-paid methods, guest posting is one of the finest methods I found.
Fire up your mobile device, strap on your earbuds, and prepare for another exciting episode of the Agents of Change podcast featuring Rich Brooks.
Hey everybody, this is Rich Brooks, and welcome to another episode of the Agents of Change podcast. But not just another episode, we are at episode 250, 1/4 of the way to 1,000. You know, in case you were challenged on the whole math thing. This episode, as always, is powered by Flight New Media. And you are tuned into the podcast that's dedicated to helping marketers, entrepreneurs, and small business people everywhere grow their business by reaching more of their ideal customers through search, social, and mobile marketing. I had thought about doing something special for the 250th episode, but what's that saying? Man plans, God laughs. My life just got really busy this month. Let's see. First of all, I had a birthday, and not just any birthday, but my 50th birthday, which is just crazy. Crazy that I'm 50, crazy that I've been doing this, not the podcast, but the whole digital agency thing for the past 21 years. And besides that, I also bought a house, so that's also been taking up a lot of my time. Finally closed on it. Now I'm just dealing with, contractors coming in and out and dealing with all this sort of stuff and trying to get the half-built apartment fully built out as soon as possible. Oh, and I'm taking a month sabbatical this summer. I may have mentioned this in a previous episode. Me and my two daughters are going to jump into a pop-up camper and basically do a road trip for a month. So that's going to be pretty spectacular too, but just a lot of stuff. And so when it came to the 250th episode, nothing. I just decided to do a regular episode. But this is actually a great episode. Today's guest was recommended by one of our long-time listeners who told me that I should really try and book Sana. Well, that turned out to be excellent advice. Although I went into the interview thinking that we were going to talk about guest blogging and how to get more guest blog opportunities, I ended up with something I think you're going to find much more valuable to growing your audience and your business. Before we get to that, I just want to remind you that if you're enjoying the Agents of Change podcast, and I certainly hope you are, then you're going to love the Agents of Change Digital Marketing Conference. This is going to be our 7th year putting on this amazing event that takes place here in Portland, Maine, and online. Now, if you've listened to previous episodes, you know some of this stuff, but I've told you before we have this amazing opening keynote from live video marketing expert Joel Comm, but now we have an equally amazing closing keynote from storytelling expert Tamsin Webster. I recently had the opportunity and pleasure of seeing Tamsin speak, and I could not be happier to having her close out the day. The Agents of Change Digital Marketing Conference, or AOC, takes place this year, 2018, on September 20th, a Thursday, as well as a day of optional additional workshops on Friday, September 21st. You can learn about all the sessions and all the workshops. Just head on over to theagentsofchange.com. The whole site is very much focused these days on the conference, so you won't have any trouble finding it. I just wanted to give you a heads up, though, that we have sold out of early bird physical tickets. That's right. We have 400 tickets for people who are actually going to be in the audience, and we set aside 100 for early bird discounts. They're all gone. So those all sold out, and they continue to sell, even the ones that we're now calling the summer special. There's still a good discount on those, but those are selling pretty quickly as well. We do have early bird virtual tickets still on sale because those are unlimited, so we just keep them selling until July 1st, I believe it is. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. If you want to join us in Portland, and I really hope you do, you can get your tickets, normally $349, for just $199. So that's a savings of $150. That's still a pretty amazing deal. If you want virtual passes because you can't make it to Portland, then those are normally $199, now just $99. So you can save $100, 50% off your virtual passes, or $150 off of your physical tickets. As I mentioned, we've already sold out of our early bird tickets, so don't wait another minute. Grab yours now. Just head on over to theagentsofchange.com, grab your tickets, and also think about grabbing some of those workshops on Friday as well. Okay, let's go check out this week's interview with Sana. Guest posting since 2009, her posts have been seen on places like Adweek, VentureBeat, BuyRegina.com, and many, many others. She is on a mission to help agents of change just like you grow their email list by getting their guest post published. She does this by creating posts, guest posts, and online courses fueled by so much tea she might create a worldwide shortage. Please welcome Sana Choudary.
Hi, Rich.
Sana, I'm glad to have you on the show.
I'm very glad to be here. I love your podcast and all the great work you do, and I'm very honored and appreciative of the fact that you had me come here. So thank you.
My pleasure. All right, so let's jump in. And my first question is, how did you get started with guest posting? How did this become a thing for you?
Yeah, so my background is working in tech and games, and I grew an incubator very, very quickly from something that no one had heard of to sort of the most well-known incubator in the space of games in a period of about 2 years. And at the same time, we also had an events arm of that, which made $250,000 in revenue. And a lot of how I did that was actually by guest posting at different sites which were well-known within that industry in that space and attracting both the individuals who were our customers as well as stakeholders through that. So that's how I actually got started with guest posting, and that's why I've been doing it since 2009, before I guess even the word existed.
Did you know that this would, how did you first start thinking oh, maybe if I publish things at other places, I'll get visibility, I'll get email signups, I'll get some SEO? Did you know this in advance, or what were you thinking when you first started doing this?
No, honestly, when I first started doing it, it was more of, hey, there is an audience that these other sites have that I want to reach. I want them to know about my ideas, what I'm working on, and as a result of that, have those guys then come into my business. And that's initially what the idea was. And the SEO, the link juice, the subscribers, that wasn't something that I had thought of very much. It was simply trying to reach an audience. And what's the best way to do it when you are a small business and starting off and don't have a large advertising budget, is actually getting known as a thought leader. And the best way to reach those guys would then be on the sites that they're already reading.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, how do you define guest posting, and is it the same thing as guest blogging?
Well, that's a great question, Rich. I actually don't think guest posting is the same as guest blogging. Now, a lot of people think it is, and that comes from the fact that, guest blogging was synonymous with link building in the world of SEO for as long as it was, right? But guest posting simply means posting at any site, any social network, any curated community, which is runs as a platform by another influencer and speaking to their audience with it. So a guest post could be like you writing something on a curated Facebook group. It could also be appearing on a podcast like this one. And then, of course, there's the guest blogging element, and it's also promotion on an influencer's email list. That would also be guest posting to my mind.
So guest posting is more of an umbrella term where guest blogging might be more specific underneath that term, correct?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. So let's just, for a second on the guest posting thing, because before we talk, this was brand new to me. When you, I belong to a number of Facebook groups as an example. Mm-hmm. So would you consider it guest posting if I just went to one of these things and published something? Or is there a little bit more to it that makes it from contributing to guest posting?
Right. So if you just went and you published something without having a conversation with the owner of the community, without actually having some sort of understanding of how they would then push or promote your post more, that's more like just a contribution. It's not necessarily a guest post. But if you basically did a couple of contributions, got a sense of what the demand and what the questions and problems that community has, and then pitched to the owner of that community saying, hey, I want to do this proper series. I would love for you to actually promote it as a series that I'm doing, especially for your group, then it becomes a guest post. So really the amount of promotion that the different curated communities do for you is what makes it more than a contribution and more in line with what I think of as a guest post.
All right, that's definitely helpful. Why have you fallen in love with guest posting? And I think I know the answer, but why don't I'd love to hear it from you.
Yeah, so my goal for myself as well as for everyone I work with is actually to help them grow their email list, right? And in terms of organic non-paid methods, guest posting is one of the finest methods I found simply because have the right community or right site that you're guest posting with, your guest post is seen as an endorsement by that influencer. And so the people who then interact with your guest posts, join your email list, come towards you, and then eventually become your customers are just a lot more warmer and engaged because they know you as a thought leader that was endorsed by an influencer. So the door towards them coming to you, becoming part of your warm audience, and then eventually becoming your buyers is just like a much more seamless process, and also people ending up engage a lot more and become some of your best fans and your biggest buyers.
Okay. So it sounds great, but let's kind of walk through it right now. So let's say that I've decided that I want to get into guest posting. How do I even start? Like, where do I find these guest posting opportunities, or is that even the first right step?
Yeah, that is the first right step. And so within that, I would break it down a little bit further. So the first thing before you go out and look for finding guest post opportunities is picking one clear goal, which is, are you guest posting for credibility, or are you guest posting to build your email list, right? Now, the types of articles you would write as well as the types of sites you would choose would be different based on which one you pick. Now, what a lot of people do is they try to do everything at once, and that means that they end up guest posting without as much of an ROI. So pick one. If you are unsure what to pick, I'll share a blog post that you can share with your audience to understand the difference between the two a little bit more. But typically, I would say start with list building first, right? So pick list building as your first clear goal. And then after that, what you would do is then get clear on the demographic that you want to reach in your first round of guest posting, right? So one of our mutual friends, Mike Foti, has a business where he writes a lot about remodeling, especially bathroom remodeling, right? So if we took Mike as an example, and he was getting started with guest posting, at this stage, I would say, hey, Mike, get clear on who that demographic is you want to reach. Now, obviously, it's homeowners, but what type of homeowners? Is it homeowners with kids? Is it homeowners with kids under 18? The tighter the demo you pick, the easier then it becomes to choose the right types of sites for guest posting. So, for example, if he did pick, homeowners with kids under 18, the question would then become, okay, what kinds of sites are those people reading? And they may not necessarily be the remodeling sites that Mike may otherwise think of, right? It might be a completely different set of sites. And the articles he would write for them would then be completely different as well. So that would be the second step, getting really, really clear on who that demographic is that you want to reach and making it as specific as possible. And then the third thing I would do is then say, okay, now all these sites that actually speak to that demo, that actually help me with my goal of list building, how engaged are these sites? Now, there's a lot of different media and news sites out there and a lot of celebrity influencer sites, but those are the types of places where people might read, might get entertained or get an aha movement, but not take action, right? Now, if you're focusing on list building, you really want to make sure that the sites that you are guest posting with have a very engaged audience that loves and is passionate about anything and everything the influencer talks about and is likely to take action, right? Now, there are a couple of signs of that. So I would then spend some time, looking at sites like SimilarWeb and looking these sites up and seeing, hey, is there a high percentage of traffic that comes from things like, say, non-search sources? How much of their traffic comes from email and direct? And that typically is a really good sign that this is an engaged audience that takes action on whatever they read on the site. So those would be the first, I'd say, 3 steps to getting started and finding the right guest posting opportunities. And from there, it's really a matter of crafting the right kind of pitch for where the audience is on those sites.
So we're going to pick a goal. We're going to get, and that's basically credibility or email list. I'd probably throw in SEO, but we'll leave that alone for now. Get clear on your demographic, be as narrow as possible in who you want to reach, and then ultimately find these sites where people are more engaged using a tool like SimilarWeb. Is this just a matter of, in this case, Mike doing searches on that he thinks people might do who are his demographic? Like, how is he going to start that process of finding those websites?
Right. So once he's clear on what that demographic is, he would search terms that people in that demographic might be searching for, right? So if they're very focused on that identity of in that example of, I'm a homeowner with kids under 18, that's what he would search by. If he thinks that they're more focused on the problem, which might be, hey, what are the right types of bathrooms to remodel your bathroom into when your kids are under 18, that's what he would search for, right? So it would be based on his understanding of, the people he's trying to reach. What are they most likely to be looking for or reading? Would it be around their problem? Would it be around their identity? Would it be around something else, right? So that's a bit of a combination of types of things he would search, and we play around until we get to the point where we have enough sites that seem to have a high engagement and seem to have people who are, actually interacting with the site, with the author, and doing things on the site, basically.
Are there online resources that we can use where if we figured out our demographic, that will point us to some of those initial first websites, or is it more about just trying to get in the head of our ideal demographic?
Once you figure out your demographic, it's really a matter of searching possible terms. Now, there are things that you could do to make that job easier, right? So if you have conversations with your audience, you would pull out, keywords from that and then use that for searching on sites like, Epic Beat, Epictions, or BuzzSumo or whatnot, right? If you don't have these at all, you're completely starting off, you're brand new in business, you don't know that much about your audience, you would use forums or other online curated communities to figure out what language they're using, right? But typically, I find most people are not so much stuck with what they could search. It's more of, being too married to one way of describing their audience, right? So, for example, I've had students that are trying to reach introverted entrepreneurs, right? Now, so that may be a lot of what they're searching, but in the world of introverted entrepreneurs, not everyone uses that label. They might actually have other problems, but not be typing in the words introverted entrepreneurs when they're looking for that, problems like in terms of sales, in terms of energy management. So it's not so much a difficulty of coming up with the terms that I see people struggling with. It's more of just simply not thinking of other ways their audience might be describing themselves or might be describing their problem.
Okay. So we now have this Excel spreadsheet, perhaps, of websites that we're going to target, websites, podcasts, whatever it may be. What are the next steps? What do we do next?
Right. So the next step, and this kind of goes into what I think of as the 2 killer mistakes, which this is usually where people sort of go wrong, is what people try to think is, okay, I have these sites. I know who my audience is. Now let me come up with guest post ideas that are going to reach as many people as possible, right? And part of it comes from a fear of not wanting their expertise to be pigeonholed, and part of it comes from, I want this to have the biggest bang for its buck, right? And so when that happens, what folks do is they write really broad ideas that end up not serving any one small segment of the audience very well. So sometimes they even get those guest posts accepted and published, and they don't end up giving them the list building returns that they might want to do. So what I would do instead of that is actually get very clear on, okay, for these particular people, right, what are some of the problems that are really keeping them up at night, And how can I basically then come up with a simple solution for where they're at that they can actually get through the guest post? So that goes into kind of the second mistake people have. They give their audience way more than their audience can chew. Is kind of like giving a PhD math problem to a third grader, right? It's like, because they know so much, they want to help people so much that they kind of throw the book and the encyclopedia at them, right? So then the second step would be coming up with a very clear solution that works for where people are at, right? And once you have those two, from there, it becomes a lot easier to now, build enough of an interaction and relationship with the influencer, start communicating with them, and then sending them the pitch. So that is what I would basically say is like, spend some time then getting clear on the problem, getting clear on how the guest post would help them, and then how you can help them basically execute on the ideas of the guest post through something like a lead magnet.
So I see where this is definitely feasible in, say, a Facebook or a LinkedIn group or some other type of forum where there's more conversation going back and forth. It seems trickier if we're looking for a guest blogging opportunity or a guest on a podcast opportunity where there's not necessarily that audience engaging like they would maybe in a more social platform type setting. Any thoughts on that or suggestions on how to approach that?
Yeah, so actually, I think a lot of that comes from wanting to, wanting from actually kind of maybe getting a little bit too specific and tight and married to, oh, I want to see results from like the blog itself. And there are ways, which we'll talk about in a second. But typically, like say, if I take the example again of Mike, right? So he could write a most helpful bathroom remodeling tips post, right? But that is not speaking to a specific problem of a specific audience. But if he takes the time to think through, okay, a specific audience like his whole, kids under the age of 18, homeowners, the problems he would know simply from being in business would be very, very different and a lot more specific, right? So I think some of this having a hard time coming up with what's that audience problems comes from being a little bit too married to, ooh, what's the audience of that blog like? But if you actually spend some time without even looking at the blog, thinking through what within my large world of audiences, what are the different types of demographics? What are the different types of problems I know they have from working with them for so many years? It would be a lot easier to then draw into a tighter problem that you can help solve. Now, the second question you asked is, okay, on the blog itself, how do I know that this blog's audience has that problem? Now, this is where there's a little hack I use where I look at the most popular posts on that particular blog. And then I look up at the comments, not only on that blog, but anywhere on the internet about that blog. And that's fairly easy to do, again, with Pictions and EpicBeat. And once I have a sense of that, it's more of a sense of, okay, within these particular comments, what are people had to applying the ideas in this blog post? Okay, that usually points the way to a specific problem that blog's audience has. So it's fairly easy to do both with blogs and sites as well as curated communities. It's just a question of taking the time to get a little bit narrower on what are the problems a specific audience has. And that audience, we have signs that this is actually an audience that hangs out on that site.
Okay. All right. Well, that certainly answers it. Definitely. It sounds like there's just a lot of research going on, which I'm sure that a lot of people are like, this sounded like a great idea until I realized how much work it is. You must hear that occasionally. Like, what do you say to people when they just say this seems like more work than it's worth?
Yeah, the people who are typically saying that, their issue is not so much with the word guest posting takes, because this is the type of work you should be doing with any content marketing you're doing. But the people who are saying that typically are, I'd be surprised if any of their other marketing, even their paid marketing, is working. Because in this world of so much information out there, the more you think about how you can best serve your audience, the more you're going to win, right? And so this is the work you should be doing with any kind of content marketing you do at all, whether guest posting or not. The feeling that this is a lot of work just comes from not taking the time to answer some of these questions, right? And the questions themselves are easy. It's literally just 3 questions. You just have to sit down and do some planning around it. And I bet if you've been in business for a couple of years, you already have a lot of the answers. It's just that you may not have pulled them out of your brain and thought them through a little bit. And then saying, okay, this is how I need to think about now going out to other sites and guest posting, right? So those questions I've kind of put into a quick little workbook and companion guide for your listeners, which we can share in the show notes, and I can give you the link of near the end. But essentially, it's just 3 questions that you should be thinking about anyways when you do your content marketing. And when you're thinking about them and doing guest posting, you're going to get a lot more returns for your guest posts.
Okay, so we've done our research, and it sounds like we kind of know what kind of questions or how we should pitch. How exactly are you pitching to people that's getting such great response rates?
Yeah, I get, I'd say about 4 out of every 5 pitches that I do get accepted.
Which is,
And I think
interestingly, the same number of dentists that say you should choose sugar-free gum if you're going to choose gum at all.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So the reason I'd say my pitches get accepted is because I've taken the time to do this kind of work, right? When I'm going to any particular site and saying, hey, can I guest post with you? These are the ideas I have. This is how I think it's going to help your audience. I've done the effort. I've taken the time to get clear on, the problem, the audience, and the solution that I'm providing to them. No one else who's pitching to them is usually doing this. So I've actually been published on sites that, in 3 to 4 years have maybe only done a handful of posts, guest posts, and then they just find it too overwhelming to manage guest posting because they get a lot of bad pitches. But having this kind of process, having a clear value for their audience, your audience, and creating a win-win allows you to then get that higher pitch rate.
I'll be honest, I get probably 2 to 3 pitches a day, and those are the ones that actually make it through the various spam filters between who's ever trying to pitch me. And I would say 99% of them at this point I don't even look at, just because I've almost come to fear the phrase guest post. So tell me how you would break through to me if you decided that you wanted to pitch to me. Like, what are some of the things that you would do to kind of break through that barrier that I've put up?
Yeah, but so I was going to say, Rich, when you first started speaking, is like, but I bet if you actually had someone who came to you with a very cool idea that you knew served your audience, you get excited and you would read it, right? And so that's really the thinking that someone like me would need to have if I'm pitching to you, is like, all right, what has he covered before? Okay, Rich tends to focus on lead generation for small businesses with all of his podcasts. What are some of the previous podcasts he's had around this? So I know you've had one on guest blogging. I know you've had quite a few things on building your network, pre-influencer marketing, on actually how do you think about types of influencers. So that gives me a sense of, what the lay of the land is like, okay, these are the possible topics you've covered. What is it that you haven't covered, right? And so from my world, it would be more, okay, you've talked a lot about, all these different types of lead generation methods, a lot about Pinterest marketing and Facebook ads, but you actually haven't talked about guest posting, at least not guest posting the way I talk about. So that would give me a sense of, all right, these are the types of things I should pitch to Rich. But then there's another thing that needs to happen before that, is like, you may not know who I am from anywhere, right? So getting a warm introduction interacting with your content, getting known to you by the people that you know and trust already, those are some of the things I would do up front to kind of get your attention first. And then from there, I would pitch something that would really fit in with what you're trying to do with this podcast.
I think that's pretty sound advice, because recently I just had somebody on the show who pitched me on something we had never covered before, but definitely falls under the whole idea of digital marketing and lead generation. And I would almost say that, like, if you had come to me, because I actually did chase you down on behalf of Mike.
That's the power of guest posting the right way.
Yeah.
Influencers ask you to come and appear on their podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think that, it's one thing to say like, oh, I've written for, Mike Stelzner and Chris Brogan and Mari Smith. I think it'd be even better if you could ever get those influencers to send a note on your behalf saying, hey, you should really talk to Sana because she's brilliant. Because of course that would come with such more emphasis. Obviously that's an ask you have to do, but just trying to increase your chances of conversions. I think that might be a good way to be able to leverage that as well.
Yeah, and the beauty of and so if that's possible, folks should definitely go for it. And if it's not, other guest posts they actually kind of build up over time, right? So the fact that I have guest posted other places kind of builds up enough of the credibility that you're then a little bit more open to hear what I have to say next, which be a pitch on a topic that you haven't covered, or a topic you have covered but not covered it from the angle that I usually cover.
That makes a lot of sense too. Now, you talk a lot about building your email list, so I kind of want to finish on this. Obviously, longtime listeners of the Agents of Change podcast know that everything I talk about comes down to building your list. So what are some specific tactics that you use in your guest posts to build your own list, and how might we employ those?
Yeah, so I would actually say there's 3 things that I do in every single guest post that are right. So the first is that I always call out the ideal audience I want within that intro section, right? So depending on the length of the guest post, if it's a longer guide, I might even say, hey, this guide is this long. If it would help you if you fit in any of these categories, and then I would bullet that out. And it won't help you if you fit in any of these categories. And so that by that, I'm alienating the people who are not my ideal audience. So I do some version of this in every single guest post I write. And that allows me to actually reach the subset of the influencer's audience who I actually want, as opposed to everyone else who's never going to be an ideal customer for me, right? So if I am writing on a site where a lot of people may be reading it for guest posting for SEO, and that's not something I help with, I make sure that initial intro section makes it clear to those who are reading for SEO that this is not going to help you. So that's the first thing I do. The second thing I do is actually integrate social proof within the body of the post itself. So this can come from telling stories of my students, my clients, can come from talking about results and sort of light and dark type of stories like, hey, I had this difficult moment and then I discovered X, Y, and Z. And then I basically had these other beautiful results. So that's the second thing I do. And this allows it to kind of organically be building this messaging in their mind of why I am sort of the person they should be working with, all within the body of the guest post. They're still not off the guest post yet. And the final thing, and this is what I think a lot of people miss doing, is having a very strong lead magnet at the end that helps people execute on the ideas that they've actually read about in the guest post, right? So those three things together allow me to attract my ideal audience from the guest post and get those people onto my email list and get some great sort of subscriber numbers as ROI for every particular guest post.
That's a very intelligent, well thought out formula. So that's pretty cool. I'm definitely going to try using that myself. Sana, this has been great. A lot of good ideas. I took a lot of notes. I know this is only audio, so you can't see this, but I did. Awesome. I know that you have something that you wanted to share with the audience, so I'd love you to share that link with us. We'll also have it in the show notes, and I'd also love you to tell us where we can check you out online.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a little workbook with the 3 questions that people need to ask themselves before they start guest posting. And it is on http:// the bit.ly link, bit.ly/GP agents. So again, bit.ly link and GP agents at the end. And this workbook is going to allow folks to hit the ground running and get a sense of a lot of the things that we talked about in this podcast and actually sort of work on them and just plan out what they want to be doing in the next few months around guest posting so they can avoid the killer mistakes, they can laser focus on their goals and find the best and right opportunities for them to reach, right? And then in terms of looking for me online, you can find me at my first name and last name.com. So that's sanachoudary.com. I'm also around on Twitter and Facebook, as well as on Pinterest, where I've been curating a lot of great guest posting content recently. So if you want to read other things that I think make sense around guest posting from around the web, that's where you would look that up. So yeah, thanks so much, Rich, for having me. This has been fun. It's been great talking about guest posting with someone who is in this world of lead generation and thinking about this stuff a lot. So it's been fun. Thank you for having me.
Sana, it's been a pleasure, and come back anytime. Thanks again.
Thank you. All right, take care.
If you're new to the Agents of Change podcast, first of all, welcome. Secondly, did you know we do a full transcript of every single episode? It's true. This week's episode you can see at theagentsofchange.com/250. You're going to see the full transcript along with all of the valuable links that Sana shared during the interview, so be sure to check that out. While you're there, you might notice a couple of buttons up in the right corner that are for subscribing. So if you are interested in getting all of the most recent episodes automatically downloaded to your favorite device, just click on the subscribe button. Or if you're listening right now, you can just head on over to theagentsofchange.com/iTunes, or just go to iTunes. You can find us, The Agents of Change. We're also available on Stitcher Radio, and we're available on Spotify or your favorite podcasting app. So go ahead and subscribe, take care of that, and don't forget to check out theagentsofchange.com for all of the information on the upcoming Agents of Change Digital Marketing Conference coming to Portland, Maine, and a computer near you on September 20th and 21st, 2018. That's all the content we have for this week. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you again in 7.
It looks like we reached the end of another episode of the Agents of Change podcast, and another mystery has been solved. But for how long? And what new challenges will appear on the horizon? Join us next time for more digital marketing adventure.